He says, no, what you see was predicted long ago by the prophet Joel. In these last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit upon all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. In those days, I will pour out my Spirit even on my servants, men and women alike, and they will prophesy. You see, Peter is saying that the prophecies of old have been fulfilled. This is what the prophet Joel told us would happen. God's Spirit is being poured out on all people. The kingdom is being unleashed. The Holy Spirit is sparking in the hearts of Christ's followers. The power of the Spirit is energizing a community of believers together. The creation rerun is happening. And it's at this point, I'm just going to invite us to pause just for a second. And just to consider, as we sit in this room and retell these stories of old, I just want us to pay attention to how do we approach these stories, these events? How do we take this in? What is our vantage point? I wonder, is this something for us that we feel like has happened? Or is this something that is happening? Do we read these remarkable events from history with a sense of just wanting to know what happened, wanting to be aware of the historical events? Or are we looking for a sign of the reality that you and I have been invited into? Maybe a second question will help. Do we approach the Holy Spirit like a meteorologist or a storm chaser? When I think of a meteorologist, I think of somebody who studies weather patterns, on infrared satellite type images, and there's a distance from the storm, right? They're looking at it through a screen. They're separate. But when I think of a storm chaser, well, obviously, I think of the 1990s movie Twister. I think this quote from N.T. Wright can maybe help connect the dots for us. It's important that someone somewhere is tracking the storm and telling us what it's doing, but when it comes to Pentecost, it's far more important that you're out there in the wind, letting it sweep through your life, your heart, your imagination, your powers of speech, and transform you from a listless or lifeless believer into someone whose heart is on fire with the love of God. Somehow, when I'm in those spaces, it's like for me, those fears are replaced by a surge of confidence because I realize I'm not alone in this. There's strength and comfort from being wrapped up in this kind of collective experience, and somehow that insecure, wall-clinging teenager can be transformed into this guy. Let that be your image of what can happen when the Holy Spirit comes to life in a community. People are changed. And truthfully, I've never sat in a room where the Holy Spirit came in tongues of fire and rested on our heads, but I have experienced the power of being part of a community where we're learning what it means to respond to the presence of the Holy Spirit in our midst. And we've never taken all of our assets and pooled them together and distributed them among the group, but we've learned what it means to care for one another. And I would actually say more importantly, we've learned what it means to let others in on what we're really going through so that they can actually care for us. And along the way, we kind of learned that more often than not, our most precious asset is our time. And we're learning what it means to be generous with our time for the sake of others, making room in our lives to connect in a meaningful way. We've learned the value of carving out space in our week to break bread, to share a meal, to pray together, and to listen to God together. And you know what? God isn't exactly adding to our community daily, but we have found that there are others in our midst who are longing for an experience of community that is energized by the presence of the Holy Spirit. And we all still have our moments where we're like unsure and hesitant, but there's a momentum in the community that keeps drawing us in, keeps pulling us into that experience out of the shadows and onto the dance floor. But we must be clear. This is not primarily an individual matter. Our restoration with God is directly linked to our restoration with others. This is from Ephesians chapter 2. Christ himself has brought peace to us. He united Jews and Gentiles into one people. In his own body on the cross, he broke down the wall of hostility that separated us. He brought this good news of peace to you Gentiles who are far away from him, and peace to you Jews who are near. Now all of us can come to the Father through the same Holy Spirit because of what Christ has done for us. This is what God is about. Jesus offers peace to each of us. You know, the literal phrasing of this passage is it actually says that Christ is our peace. He is the guarantee. He is the source of the peace that we can experience. And as the Spirit extends peace to individuals from different walks of life, he also removes the barriers that are between us, working towards this vision of humanity restored in harmony. And for us, this means that as we experience the peace that comes from the Holy Spirit, it's going to resonate in our hearts, but it also is going to extend to the world around us. This is what Paul means, I believe, when he concludes this passage on the fruit of the Spirit by saying, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. As the Spirit is producing this fruit in our lives, we are also learning to move in the ways of the Spirit as he's revealing it to us. You see, peace is our gift from the Spirit, and peace is our way of continuing to move in step with the Spirit.